After a long 7-year wait, we finally got Daredevil back again on our small screens, and honestly, they have cooked. Let's just say Daredevil has truly been born again.
Say that again?
So let's talk about it. As always, there will be spoilers ahead, so come back after you have watched it.
You know, your boy might actually be immoral.
Episode 1 picks up a few months or so after Matt got busy with She-Hulk. We then see that he, Karen and Foggy all attend a retirement party of Sherry, a police officer. But they then get ambushed by Bullseye, who now has a new spine. Matt then fights Poindexter, but it's too late and sadly, Foggy dies. Matt, in the anger of the moment, then yeets Bullseye over the edge of the building, but Bros somehow survived. Then after an epic title card, a year later we see Wilson Fisk return to greet Vanessa, who's now been running the business since he apparently disappeared, or was busy trying to get Echo to help him. Fisk has now decided to give up his life of crime and illegal businesses to become the mayor of New York, and he files his name to run for office. Matt has then distanced himself from Karen after the death of Foggy and started a new firm with Kirsten. We then see Poindexter get sentenced to 11 life sentences back to back, and we learn that after the death of Foggy, Matt has stopped being Daredevil, to which some are pleased and some are scared. But this helps Fisk's campaign as he vows to remove vigilantes from the streets of New York and will make New York a better place to live. Matt also starts dating this therapist named Heather, and she's a pretty important character it seems in the show. Then we get the moment we've all been waiting for, Matt and Fisk coming face to face after 7 long years. And it seems they respect each other, with a silver lining of threats that they will absolutely punch the crap out of each other if either of them step out of line. But obviously Fisk is glad that Matt is no longer Daredevil, and Matt somewhat believes that Fisk is truly doing this out of the goodness of his heart. But whatever nonsense Fisk was saying worked, and the people of New York voted a former crime boss to be their mayor, which is just insane, but it does make sense considering their president is a literal Hulk. Then the episode ends with us learning that Vanessa cheated on Fisk during his disappearance, and Matt is super worried about what will happen next. First off, I have to say this is by far the best Marvel season premiere ever, because it gets right into the action. Now obviously you can't blame some of the other shows because they do have to show the origins of how the people get their powers, but comparing it to the likes of WandaVision and Secret Invasion, 2 shows with great first episodes, it does surpass it by far. The only other episode that sort of gives this tough competition is the first episodes to both Loki season 1 and 2. But Marvel, you really have to stop killing main characters in the first episode. Like you had Maria Hill die in Secret Invasion, now Foggy? You're telling me they decide to bring back Foggy only to kill him 20 minutes in, and it's absolutely wild, but it does sort of set the tone of what to expect in the show, and also does serve as a sort of goodbye to the Netflix era of the characters, and it does set Matt on this new journey that's properly set in the MCU. Also, the very first scene of Matt's Daredevil sense is so cool because it switches aspect ratios and is very reminiscent of the Spider sense. Another thing that this show always does so well is that as much as this is a Daredevil show, it's also equally a Kingpin show. And it's so good to see Kingpin once again, even though he was an Echo, but in this he has this weird aura of doing good, but it also seems as though he has more sinister intentions behind it. And I'm all for it, so this episode gets a 9 out of 10.
Listen man, I'm visually impaired.
Episode 2 picks up with Fisk addressing New York in his inauguration, and he talks about how he won't let vigilantes run in New York anymore. This includes a certain judge, jury and executioner, a really good lawyer, and a certain red and blue wall-crawling menace. Then we see these 2 guys harassing or try to mug this poor man, and a guy named Hector steps in and fights them off, but one of the perpetrators then accidentally trips and falls onto a train track and gets run over. We learned that these people that were harassing the guy were in fact police, and Hector gets arrested for murdering a cop. Matt then hears Hector getting beaten up during an investigation and decides to represent him in the court of law because he can hear that he's truly innocent, but he is hiding something. Fisk then fixes a giant pothole, which is kinda useful, not gonna lie, and at the trial of Hector the judge doesn't even listen to Matt and doesn't even grant bail. And we see BB Urich, aka Ben Urich's niece, interview Kingpin even though he did murder her uncle. Heather is then at a book signing where we get our first look at someone who's almost definitely giving off Muse vibes, but we shall wait and see. Cherry then goes to Hector's house and learns that he is in fact the White Tiger, another vigilante sticking up for what is right, and he's inspired by the acts of Daredevil. Matt realizes that this was the information that he was hiding in their first meeting and asks him to tell more information about the case so that they can win. Fisk then has this whole thing with the police department and how they will all leave since he was elected mayor, but then Fisk goes back to his kingpin ways and threatens the commissioner using his family, showing us his first signs that he might not have completely changed. Fisk and Vanessa then go to couples therapy with none other than Heather, and Matt finds out about the guy that Hector tried to save and goes to his apartment, where he gets attacked by some of the police, and Matt kicks into Daredevil mode and starts brutally beating them up and has potentially killed them, and now we must wait a week to see what truly happened to them. This episode was a lot slower paced, but it does set the grounds of what the season will be about. It will most likely center around the whole White Tiger and the cop killing case and why there's so much controversy around it. And this leads to Matt meeting Frank Castle and suiting up once again. And Kingpin will then be pissed at the fact that Matt has become Daredevil. But despite the slow pace, it was still a great entry, because it really does focus on Matt and how he deals with problems without the Daredevil suit, and it is an interesting aspect to the show. And it really does develop Matt as a person and as a lawyer. But eventually it does lead to him suiting up and Daredevil being born again.
Say that again?
However, on the other side, we see that Kingpin is sort of back to his old ways with blackmailing the commissioner's family, which isn't too outrageous in Kingpin standards, but it does show the extent that he will go to keep his job, and it seems as though the story will lead to both of them going down to their former paths. It's always so great to see people inspired by the heroes in the MCU, like with what we saw with the White Tiger, and it does show that the work that these heroes do does have an impact on someone somewhere, and that's ultimately what superheroes are about at the end of the day. Also, these random cutaways of the people of New York giving their opinion on the current state of affairs is great to see, and it does ground the story even more, especially now that this is in the MCU and everything is leading to a multiversal conflict. But this episode gets a 7 out of 10. Subscribe and comment below your thoughts.